Welcome back. Starting from this video, we're gonna start talking about chapter 5, elasticity and its application. Elasticity is not a brand new topic upon this moment, if you still remember. In both chapters 4 and 6, we already mentioned elasticity. We actually used the idea of elasticity, right? For example, in chapter 4, when we talk about healthcare reform, we already talked about the demand for healthcare treatment should be quite inelastic. Okay? In other words, even when the price changes a lot, usually price goes up, okay, over time. We find that people still want, the brain tumor surgeries, the example we used in chapter 4, right? So you find a very small change in quantity demanded, okay? And back in chapter 6, when we talk about labor market, I believe there's one question in the problem set which asks you, if the government the government raised the minimum wage, right? And how would that affect employment and unemployment? And would that effect depend upon the elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply, right? So these are the two places where we already discussed the elasticity. But in this chapter, we're gonna dive deeper and give you guys a quantitative sense of elasticity. Okay. In other words, we're gonna play with the numbers. Okay. Are you ready? All right, let's go. First of all, let's get the price elasticity of demand defined carefully. Okay. So here we're going to talk about the price elasticity of demand. And later in this chapter, we're going to talk about some other elasticities, for example, income elasticities, and also briefly talk about the elasticity of supply, okay? But we're going to spend the vast majority of the time in this chapter talking about the price elasticity of demand, okay? So price elasticity of demand, as we already said before, tells us how much the quantity demanded of a good responds to a change in the price of that good. Okay? Or alternative way to interpret it, elasticity is how sensitive are buyers to the price. Okay? So on the market, sometimes we find that when price change a lot, but the quantity demanded changed a little, as the healthcare treatment we already said before, right? Sometimes you find that a teeny tiny change in price could lead to a huge change in quantity demanded, okay? In other words, the buyers are very sensitive, very responsive to the change in price, okay? So again, that's how we define price elasticity of demand. Okay. Now, speaking of the magnitude, to what extent they are responsive or sensitive? So here we got work on the numbers. Okay. We lead to computing the price elasticity of demand. Okay. Here is a pretty quick example. Okay. If the price of a Blue Origin ticket rises from $28 million to $35 million, the quantity demanded falls from 10 to 8. Okay. Of course, this is a hypothetical example. Okay, but Blue Origin, that's the aerospace travel vehicle, right? And invested by Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon. Okay, so that you could say that the price is crazy, right? I believe that back in 2021, for their first aerospace travel, the price was, the rumor says the price was $28 million. Okay. But the quantity demanded, that's, the number I created. Okay. So you could imagine, very few people would be able to afford that. Okay. You got to be probably billionaires to be able to do that. All right. So here, come back to this example. Let's calculate the price elasticity of demand. Okay. Now here, the EDP stands for elasticity, price elasticity of demand. Okay, so this superscript D stands for demand, and the subscript P stands for price. Okay, and based upon the definition, that is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Okay. So here, percentage, the small triangle here is delta. That's a Greek letter, stands for change, right? So percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Okay, and here we need to figure this out based upon the numbers we had in the question. Okay. But before that, I want to remind you of one more thing. Here, the change in price is the driver or the cause, and the change in quantity demanded is the effect or the consequence. Okay, make sure you know what causes what. Okay. All right. So here, the percentage change in quantity demanded equals the change in quantity demanded divided by the initial level of quantity demanded. Okay, so that means here the change, because it falls from 10 to 8, so we're gonna use 8, which is the final level, or the after the change minus the initial level 10 divided by the initial level. Remember, the denominator is going to be the initial level. Okay. So here you get the minus 2 over 10, so it's minus 20%. Once again, the minus sign here represents the decrease in quantity demanded. Okay. Later, you will realize that, this minus or plus sign doesn't matter, because when we look at the elasticity, we always look at the absolute value. Okay. All right. The percentage change in price, we're going to use the similar way to figure this out. It's delta P, the change in price, divided by initial price. Okay, so it's going to be 35 minus 28 divided by 28. Okay, that's the initial price. And you would find it's 25%. Okay. Now, once we get these two percentage change, we plug them back into the initial formula here. Then we should be able to find the price elasticity of demand. So it's going to be 20% over 25%. Again, just simply drop this minus sign. Okay. Then you will get 0.8. Okay. So that is the price elasticity of demand. All right, in this case. Again, it should be quite straightforward. Okay. The next example we're going to check out is the opposite of this one. In other words, here we find that the price goes up from 28 to 35, right? And quantity demanded drops from 10 to 8. The next case is going to be exactly the same, except the price would fall from 35 to 28, and as a result, the quantity demanded is going to rise from 8 to 10. Let's look at this one. Okay, so we need to calculate the price elasticity of demand again. However, before we calculate it, I actually want to try the graphical way to show this, the graphical interpretation of these. Okay. Now, again, the formula is exactly the same. Let's look at the graph. So here you find the downward sloping demand curve, right? And price goes up. So this is the previous case. Okay, the example number 1. So the price goes up from 28, that's P1, to 35, right? And quantity demanded falls from 10, which is Q1, to 8, which is Q2, right? So we're moving from this lower point to the upper point along the line, right? Now here, in this example, it's the opposite case. So the price falls, and then, as you could imagine, the quantity demanded increases, right? If you think about, the calculation we just did, so we use the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price, right? On the graph, that's exactly how we would define the slope of demand curve, okay? In other words, the graphical interpretation would be that's the slope between this lower point and this upper point, okay? Now, if you understand this, then here you might guess that, because it's a slope, so when we go the other way around, when price drops, quantity demanded increases, we're just moving back from this upper point to the lower point, right? But slope should stay the same, correct? Now here, I strongly recommend you to pause the video and think about this, okay? Do you believe what I just said makes sense to you? Do you believe the slope should stay the same? If so, then the price elasticity of demand should be the same, right? Because that's exactly the slope, okay? Now, if that's what you believe, then go ahead and calculate the price elasticity of demand for the second example and see if you can prove that is right or that is not right. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and do it. All right, now let's go ahead and calculate it. So here, the quantity, percentage change in quantity would be 10 minus 8, okay, divided by 8, which is the initial quantity demanded here. Then you find that it's going to be 25%, correct? And for percentage change in price, it's going to be change in price, which is 28 minus 35, okay, because price drops, divided by initial price 35. And then you would find that here, the percentage change becomes minus 20%, because again, minus means decrease. Now, if we plug this back into the elasticity formula, you're going to find it's 25% over 20%. So the price elasticity of demand is 1.25. Do you still remember the previous number we got? In the previous example, the price elasticity of demand was 0.8, right? Here it's 1.25. That means we got different results. Then why are the results different? Okay, so that's the question you should think about. And the next question would be, how are we going to fix it? Okay, now let's look at the calculation we already did here. I believe some of you at least should already found that. Oh, so the difference, when you look at the change in quantity demanded or change in price, it's the same, right? It's 2 or minus 2, 7 or minus 7. As we said before, the plus minus sign doesn't matter, right? So the value stays the same. However, the difference comes from the denominator. Here it's 8. In the previous case, it's 10. Here it's 35. In the previous case, it's 28. In other words, the difference in results comes from the benchmark we use. Okay, so when price goes up, we use P1, which is $28 million as the benchmark, as the denominator when we compare the percentage change, right? But here, when I'm sorry, it should be here. When price drops, then we use $35 million. That's the initial price as the benchmark to calculate this ratio, right? As the denominator. So that's where the difference in results comes from, okay? And then if you understand this difference or where the difference comes from, then think about how are we going to fix it. We're going to come back and talk about this in the next video.